Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Surat.
Assalamu alaikum. Everyone hear me at the back? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank my hosts for inviting me here. Believe it or not, I actually used to find talking in front of lots of people extremely scary and frightening. So it's a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I feel so relaxed and comfortable in the presence and company of my Muslim brothers and sisters. Jazakallah khair for welcoming me so warmly to Islam. There was a time a few years ago when I was in Ahmadi, and this would have been absolutely inconceivable because I was taught very much to be afraid of Muslims. In fact, most Ahmadis are raised that way. And my purpose today is to talk to you about a little bit about my journey, how I came to Islam, and to tell you about some of the differences between Ahmadiyya and Islam, and perhaps dispel some of the misconceptions that Muslims have about Ahmadiyya and some of the misconceptions that Ahmadis themselves have about Islam and about Ahmadiyya, inshallah. So I've called my talk A Fracture in Belief. The reason being that the journey to Islam, no matter where you come from, involves a disassociation from your previous set of beliefs and the embracing of a completely new worldview. This is quite a phenomenal process, and for a lot of people, especially coming from Ahmadiyya, it can break their iman completely to the point where they reject belief entirely. They become atheists. And this is very sad. So the nice thing about a fracture is that it doesn't completely break your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but when the fracture reheals, it reheals in a much stronger way. So now you have strengthened and renewed iman in the correct aqidah. Is this all making sense so far? Are you following me? I'm not speaking too quickly or too slowly or anything. Yeah? Very, very quick overview who I am. That's me. Just a very, very ordinary person. I'm on Twitter. That's my email address. Can you read that from the back? If you can't, I can share the slides later. You can't? Okay, so what I'll try and do is I'll try and go over some of the points. I'm not going to read every line to you, but I'll cover everything carefully. And if you would like copies of the slides afterwards, inshallah, no problem, I can provide them to the centre and they can forward them on, so you have the information to hand, inshallah. So I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active now, quite a loud mouth. I speak about Muslim issues, political issues, that sort of thing. I was born into Ahmadiyya or Qadianism in 1965. My family came originally from Qadian, and therefore all I knew my whole life up to the point of my departure was Ahmadiyya. And I came back to Islam on November the 26th, 2004. So very quickly, we'll talk about what belief is. This is a dictionary definition of belief. Belief is a psychological state in which an individual holds a proposition or premise to be true. Now, that basically means you think something is true, right? Or you feel something is true. That doesn't necessarily make it true. So some beliefs are true beliefs, in other words, they correspond with the truth, and other beliefs are not true. In other words, people can hold a belief about something even though it is false. That doesn't, just because they believe that it is true, doesn't make it true. And before 2004, my belief was that Ahmadiyya was the true Islam. So, what caused this fracture in belief? There are many conspiracy theories about this. The Ahmadis typically, when somebody leaves the Ahmadiyya, start to concoct stories about why people left. And no matter how good or bad your character, it doesn't matter. Every time the stories are very, very similar. They left for personal reasons. They were a bad apple anyway. They got kicked out, etc., etc. Alhamdulillah, I've had the experience of welcoming lots of Ahmadis since I left back to Islam, and the stories are circulated about them are broadly similar. So I'm in good company, alhamdulillah. But basically, what started this process for me was that my life was in a bad way. You know, I was going through separation and divorce. I'd lost a very, very fantastic job. I mean, just the most awesome job. Paid ridiculous money. I was, you know, alhamdulillah, for me, life, I thought at that time before was really, really good, but then lost the job, breaking up, living on my own, going through incredible poverty in a very, very short amount of time. It's amazing how quickly you burn through money when you have a lot of it. You know, you spend it much faster than you think it will always be there. And of course, as you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tries us in terms of wealth in turn. Sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes the nation has it, sometimes it doesn't. So, given that I was going through, I guess, a personal, difficult situation, I took comfort and refuge in Ahmadiyya. And what I decided to do was to learn more about it, so that I could promote it. We were always being told when I was growing up, you know, you should push this to other people, you should bring people to Ahmadiyya, bring people to Ahmadiyya. And my objection to this was, well, I don't actually know anything about Ahmadiyya. I don't actually know what I'm calling people to. I was not particularly devout Ahmadi up until this point, when I started to learn a bit more. And I was praying a lot for guidance. I kept praying, making dua to Allah for guidance. And I started to engage more with the community, to try and do more activities on its behalf, and spent a lot of time on the Ahmadiyya website. I read some of their literature, read a lot of their literature actually, listened to a lot of the talks of the leader, Mirza Sultan Ahmad. And I quickly came to realize that I knew very little about Ahmadiyya. And I was literally learning from scratch. And the more I learned about Ahmadiyya, the more indefensible the whole doctrine became to me. I couldn't really relate to it. And this caused me to reconsider my belief. I felt pushed into a corner, you know, make a decision, because this clearly isn't making sense. I'm going to very quickly cover my life as an Ahmadi, so you know what it was like for one person to be an Ahmadi. Remember, every Ahmadi experiences their life differently. Every human being experiences their life differently. I'm not making blanket claims for representing the whole of the Ahmadiyya. And before I talk about my experiences, let me tell you, I still have family in the Ahmadiyya, who I love very, very much indeed. And we should always remind ourselves that the Prophet ﷺ also had a lot of family who remained non-believers. And this caused him a lot of pain. But he didn't stop loving them. You know, they were even his protectors, but he didn't stop loving them. Kept inviting them, and they remained non-believers. This is something that we should bear in mind. So, God forbid, I'm not comparing myself to the Prophet in any way, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What I'm saying is that our relationship to those people who haven't come to Islam yet should be one of love and compassion. My mother, for example, is still an Ahmadi, and of course everybody loves their mother very much, or I certainly hope everybody loves their mother very much. And my favourite relative outside of my mother in the whole world, my uncle, is an Ahmadi, and I love him to bits. He's a wonderful man. And it's possible to be, as you know, a wonderful person and still be misguided. So I'm not making any judgments or value calls on how good a human being is. That's not my job to do. All I'm going to tell you about is what life was like for me personally as an Ahmadi. Okay? The first thing was a funny example. One of my first experiences was that 1974. Does everyone know what happened in 1974? I'm making a lot of assumptions here. In 1974, there was a National Assembly session in Pakistan where the Ahmadiyya had the opportunity to present their case, and I think over 30 people from the Pakistani parliament decided to push through a case where Ahmadis would be declared a non-Muslim minority. And this actually happened. They were declared a non-Muslim minority. In the same year, there was a meeting of the ulama in Arabia, Saudi Arabia. And there was a consensus across the board of all the ulama that the Ahmadiyya were to be declared a non-Muslim community. And this was done with great difficulty. Muslims at that sort of level, at the top level of the ulama, don't make this kind of judgment call lightly. There are some people who say, for example, that the National Assembly sessions in '74 in Pakistan, they were politically motivated. That's by the by. The fact is it did happen, and for many Ahmadis this is a difficult time. Quite a few incidents of violence preceded this from both sides, and for me personally, I was quite young then, and my mother told me that my grandparents might now be in danger, and I didn't understand why would they be in danger. They said, well, because they're Ahmadis. And I said, hold on a minute, their name isn't Ahmad, they have a different surname, right? So that was my first exposure, my first understanding that Ahmadiyya is not the same thing as Islam. Before this, I didn't really have a conscious impression that I was anything other than Muslim. Because Ahmadis are raised to think that they are the true Muslims, right? So this is the first time I thought, oh, hang on a minute, so there's a difference here. Before that, I didn't know. A couple of years later, a friend of mine, a Muslim friend at school, I mixed with Muslims, didn't tell them I was an Ahmadi. I said I was a Muslim, because that's what I believed I was. He gave me a little Qur'an, one of those little tiny ones that you can only read with a magnifying glass. And my mum found out that he'd given me this, and she kind of gave me a warning. You don't want to mix too closely with these people. I said, well, what do you mean, these people? And she wasn't too clear about explaining what she meant by these people. But I got the sense that there was a difference. So my experience of these differences between Ahmadiyya and Islam were reinforced from the inside, from the community, from my family. I remember going to one of these events that the Ahmadiyya regularly hold, and my great uncle, distant relative, but very loved relative, was sitting amongst me and a group of other boys, and we were talking about Mirza Sultan Ahmad being a prophet. And I was immediately surprised at this, because I remember reading an English translation of the Qur'an where it was quite clearly said that Muhammad was the last prophet. So I mentioned this to my uncle. I said, hold on a minute, but how can there be any prophets after Muhammad? And he took me aside and tried to explain to me that I was very mistaken. He was very upset at what I had said, that how can he be a prophet? Because my understanding was, before then, was that he was some kind of reformer or messiah or a bunch of other terms that didn't mean anything much to me at that age, and certainly didn't mean prophet. So this is a very confusing time for me, as you can imagine. And to this day, you'll get differing questions and answers from Ahmadis. You'll speak to an Ahmadi and sometimes you'll say, well, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claimed to be a prophet, and sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they'll say, well, actually, no, he didn't. And you need to be aware of this. You need to be aware of what they mean by that and why they twist it to suit. Sometimes they don't know themselves. Sometimes it's a genuine shock to Ahmadis. It was a shock to me. Other experiences that I grew up as I became a teenager was that Ahmadiyya was referred to as the saved sect. One of the supposed sects of the 73 that would be saved. It's an erroneous notion. I've only recently come to discover what the concept of the saved sect means, and that it isn't just one labelled group, Does everyone know about the hadith of the saved sect? I guess a lot of people do, right? That the previous generations were split up into sects, the Jews and the Christians into so many sects, and my Ummah too will be split into 73 sects. All of them will be in the fire except one. And then he was asked, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which one will be saved? And he said, that which is on my path and the path of my companions. And that's the bit that the Ahmadis typically leave out when they talk about the 73 sects. So it doesn't actually refer to one named group. That doesn't make any sense. Otherwise you could set yourself up, call yourself a new group and say, we are the saved sect. And thereby proclaiming themselves saved. It doesn't quite work like that. And so my experience was that we didn't seem so saved because there were many people amongst us who were benefit frauds and all kinds of criminals and committing all kinds of undesirable activity. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that Ahmadis are any more or any less erroneous in this way than any other group. The point was this. The point was that we referred to ourselves as a saved sect, right? We're all going to heaven, okay? And my experience was that, well, although I'm no one to judge, there seemed to be a lot of people doing some pretty bad things. And it was, you know, my parents and my family were talking about people who've done some really horrendous things, including murders and so forth. And so this didn't kind of jive very well with my understanding of what the saved sect was meant to be. And there were things like social boycotts going on, and I found that very uncomfortable as well. So as I grew up, I kept getting these little pinpricks of dissonance that made me think that, you know what, this doesn't sound right to me, okay? And then eventually it came to the point where, as I said, my life was in some kind of disarray, and I wanted to research Ahmadiyya as much as possible and to really defend it. And I wanted to promote it via the internet. And I was told in no uncertain terms by my group leader that I wasn't allowed to do that without permission from the centre. In fact, only the centre is allowed to do promotion. To this day, that is still the policy, that there is an official voice of the Ahmadiyya and unofficial voices are absolutely not allowed. Now, I found this preposterous. You know, as I said, before this point, I was not very close to the centre. I was a bit of a loner, I suppose. I didn't like the things that I was seeing. I didn't like the gossiping. I didn't like that we didn't look anything like a saved sect, actually. We just looked like an ordinary group of people. And I found it very uncomfortable that I wasn't able to promote Ahmadiyya myself on the internet. After all, if you're the saved sect, what's the harm in promoting it and asking people? There is a kind of logic that, you know, maybe you don't know how to do it properly. But, you know, even in Islam, you can't go around telling your fellow brothers and sisters, you're not allowed to promote Islam. We're only allowed to do it from Mecca. Or, you know, that doesn't happen in Islam. We have a very wide variety of voices, and we have a wide variety of ulama who disagree on certain things. You know, they're allowed to express that disagreement. And we have good Muslims and we have bad Muslims, but we don't suppress that speech. Certainly not in this country anyway. And the other thing about Ahmadiyya that you'll hear a lot of is an enormous focus on chanda. Does anyone know what chanda is? Chanda is a financial contribution. Chanda specifically is a financial contribution that all Ahmadis are expected to make, whether you're on income support, whether you're a pensioner, whether you're a student, it doesn't matter. You have to pay 6.25% of your income as an obligation to the centre. And this is a clear bid'ah. You know, there is no such thing in Islam. In Islam, as you know, there is zakah, which is above the nisab level, 2.5%, and there is sadaqah, which is not compulsory, right? And obviously, if you are a Muslim who doesn't earn above the nisab level, you don't even have to pay zakah. And whatever you pay over and above that is between you and your creator. But in Ahmadiyya, you have to pay 6.25% of your income, and there are dozens of different types of jandas and all kinds of different contribution schemes where you are heavily pressured into contributing towards the centre. And I have no issue, and nobody, I think, has an issue with people voluntarily contributing money towards whatever they want to do. That's fine. But to make it an obligation, and to make it an obligation, especially on the poorest members, I think, is absolutely not on. It's certainly not Islamic. So those were some of my experiences. More experiences were that we always, you know, our leaders were always talking about the persecution. Persecution, persecution, persecution. All you ever heard about was persecution. And although there is persecution of the Ahmadiyya, there is no doubt about that, and Muslims should be totally against that. The fact is that persecution is massively overplayed. Massively overplayed. I mean, we should stand up and be against any kind of persecution of Ahmadis. But the Ahmadiyya use this in a very political way, in a way to try and keep their followers within so that they carry on contributing the money, and to make them afraid of the outside. Don't go to those dangerous, bad, bearded Muslims, they'll persecute the hell out of you, and you'll end up in hellfire because you're not one of the same sect. So that sort of thing was constantly on your mind as an Ahmadi. We were always referring to people who disagreed with us as our opponents. They're going to end up losers. They're going to be in the hellfire. They're mullahs this, mullahs that. So there was a constant denigration of ordinary Muslims. We were almost looked at. Muslims were almost looked at. And I say not actually, but almost as subhuman. My impression growing up was they're not quite like us. They're not saved. They have weird beliefs. And this was never countered in any way. So even though it might not have been promoted literally, the inference was very heavy. So, for example, the reference to opponents, reference to mullahs, and that's how you grew up thinking that those Muslims are weird. They're grave worshippers. They don't know anything about belief. They're backwards. So that was the kind of thing. Whenever there was a disaster, natural disaster, I've noticed this recently as well. So, for example, the enormous earthquake in Pakistan, Kashmir, the floods in Pakistan, the tsunami in Indonesia. Oh, those people didn't accept Mirza Sultan Ahmad, that's why they were punished. So, whenever there was any kind of natural disaster, it was because they didn't accept Mirza Sultan Ahmad. And there was a point recently where I was having a discussion with somebody online about this, and I said, has anyone seen the footage of that boy and his father who was shot in Gaza by an Israeli soldier? You must have seen it. You're familiar with that, right? So I mentioned this case. I said, that boy, did he die in Palestine because he didn't accept Mirza Sultan Ahmad? And the answer to this, from an educated Ahmadi, was yes. Okay, so this I heard recently. This I didn't hear when I was an Ahmadi. But when I was an Ahmadi, any time there was any kind of natural disaster, it's like, see, those Muslims, they had it coming, That was the kind of reaction. Muslims didn't accept Mirza Sultan Ahmad, the promised Messiah, as they call him, and therefore they suffered this. And when we mixed with other people, especially Muslims, they didn't get to find out we were Ahmadi until it was too late. And what do I mean by too late? Well, by the time friendships had been established. You've been friends with someone a long time, okay, and you've always thought of them as a Muslim. And suddenly, a year, 2 years down the road, suddenly you realize they're an Ahmadi. It comes out. And they get a bit spiky and defensive, and you're thinking, well, if we were friends, why didn't you tell me this before? And it's very hard for you to separate that friendship from the feelings you have for that person in your heart, So this is something that I did as an Ahmadi, and I know many other Ahmadis that do exactly the same thing, and Ahmadis continue to do that to this day. There was never any balancing dialogue. There was never any open discussion. You were never allowed to show any dissent. You were never allowed to speak up against anything that was being said. You had to go along with whatever your leaders were telling you. So, a very regimented thought process. And there were hardly any books. I mean, we got to read The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam in English, which is a book by Mirza Sultan Ahmad. It was one of the only ones at that time that had been translated. And that was pretty much it. So there was this real lack of any kind of intellectual discourse. Listen, if I'm speaking at the wrong kind of level or whatever, please stand up and say, brother, you're talking rubbish, can you please speak in a slightly different way? Is this okay? Is everyone getting what I'm saying? Yeah? Is that okay? Feel free to interrupt if I'm not loud enough or clear enough on a certain point. If you need me to clarify anything, please ask. So, and the other thing is other faiths. It was okay to tell Christians and Jews that we were Ahmadis and we were the same sect, and we're not like the other Muslims, But Muslims, you are not allowed to tell this to. And that kind of always felt a little bit uncomfortable. So towards the end, I spent a lot of time doing duty. What do I mean by duty? As an Ahmadi, one of the things that you have is a distribution of voluntary duties that you do. I think it's quite a cool system, actually. To volunteer to do something good. But the stuff that was available to volunteer for was, I think, more for propaganda value. This is my personal impression of it. So, for example, I did security duty. What was security duty? It was going to Mirza Tahir's grave. He's the fourth leader, by the way. Nice guy, charismatic. And I was there to apparently guard his grave in the middle of this field that no one ever went to at night time anyway. You know, they have a centre in, I've even forgotten how it's been so long, alhamdulillah, that's actually good news, but somewhere in Surrey, they call it Islamabad, it's near a small village called Tilford. And it's kind of a big field with kind of army barracks, and that's where Mirza Sultan Ahmad is buried, right, alongside his wife. And one of the duties you have is there is a hut there. You go to the hut and you spend all night there basically guarding the place to make sure no one vandalizes it and whatever. Now, you as Muslims know that Muslim graveyards all over the country are being vandalized, right? Have you heard of this? This happens a lot. Muslim graveyards all over the country are being vandalized. It's horrendous. There are some places where 13 to 20 graves in one night were wrecked, vandalized. It doesn't happen to the Ahmadiyya. And if it does happen to the Ahmadiyya, it happens because the people who are doing the vandalizing think that they're Muslim graves. Certainly it's not done by Muslims, you know, God forbid. But in all my time of doing the security duty, the idea was to feed my paranoia that, hey, you know, some Muslim out there might come and attack the place, so watch out, be a man, you know, protect the grave. Of course, no Muslim wants to do anything like this. No Muslim would go out in the middle of the night to vandalize the grave. But there's simply not that kind of feeling in this country. Yeah, there is a lot more passion, for example, about this issue in, say, Pakistan and Indonesia. And that leads to very regrettable incidents which we as Muslims should stand up against. But in this country, there's been nothing of that kind of community tension. But still, this paranoia was built up. You never know, a big bad Muslim might come and, you know, mess up the grave or whatever. So there's this feeling of paranoia. So as an Ahmadi, you feel paranoid about other Muslims. Do you see how this feeds on the distrust? Yeah? So Ahmadis, from a very, very young age, certainly myself, are taught to distrust Muslims, fundamentally. Okay? And more stuff that I did was, I was an office bearer. An office bearer means you hold a position where you perform another responsibility. And I was, I did some work in finance, and every so often I would have to phone people up or contact people to collect money off them. Remember the gender arm I was talking about, the 6.25% tax? That's the thing that I had to chase after. And in all my time, we had these receipt books where you had all the different categories itemized. No one ever paid pennies a go, ever. Me and my dad were the only people paying sadaqah. The gender arm was, you know, really, really heavily enforced, 6.25%. You've got to do that. And the other thing is they have a yearly event called the Jalsa Salana, which is held in another field in Surrey. And the emphasis on that is more than that on the Eids. Certainly it seems even more important than Umrah, from my perspective as an Ahmadi. So all of this started to read, and as I went online onto the Ahmadiyya official website, and I started to read, this is where, by the way, for those who are falling asleep, this is where it starts to get a bit interesting, okay? So, this is the stuff that some of you have been waiting for. Well, what did this guy say that offends Muslims so much? Well, you're about to find out. So this is where my belief started to get called into question. So here is something that is in one of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's books. The references are all available on request. They're beyond question. You probably can't read that, so I'll read it for you. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explains here how he is actually Isa alayhi salam, or the Messiah. He says, God named me Mary in the 3rd volume of Rahina Ahmadiyya. I was nurtured for 2 years as Mary and was raised in a womanly seclusion. Then the spirit of Jesus was breathed into me, just as was done with Mary. Hence, I was considered to be pregnant in a metaphorical manner. After a period of several months, not exceeding 10, I was made Jesus out of Mary by the revelation embodied in the last part of the 4th volume of Rahina Ahmadiyya, and thus I became Jesus, son of Mary. But God did not inform me of the secret at that time. Now, I had great difficulty with this. You know, if you read the Qur'an, the beauty, even in English, is incredible. It really touches the heart every time you listen. By the way, mashallah, wonderful description earlier, Surat al-Asr, by one of our sisters earlier. It never fails to move me when you read the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is like He's speaking to you directly. You always find something new in the Qur'an. But the more I read of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's writings, the more I thought, there is someone who is revealing something to him, and it isn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. More to come. So, does anyone here find this okay? Are you comfortable with a man saying that he was metaphorically Mary and then the spirit of Jesus was breathed into him and then he became metaphorically Jesus? It doesn't kind of feel right. Can you imagine Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying something like this? That God said this to him? Okay. So, the other things that I found really difficult to handle were the abuse that he had for his opponents. So this is one of his more famous quotes. All Muslims, and hold your seats for this one, all Muslims regard my books with reverence and care, and parents might want to cover their kids' ears at this point. All Muslims regard my books with reverence and care and benefit from their sublime thoughts, except those who are the offspring of prostitutes. God has put a seal upon their hearts, and they do not accept me. Subhanallah. I mean, he's saying those people who don't regard his books with reverence, and some of his books, by the way, are pure trash. Forgive me for saying that. I don't mean to offend any Ahmadi by saying that. But any neutral reader reading some of his books, it's like trash talking. It's like the modern Twitter exchanges between two celebrities, him and his opponents. They were really beneath the level of a decent gentleman, never mind a prophet. So, the Ahmadis counter this by saying, oh, no, that's not what he said. He said, Zuriyat al-Bagaya, which means the offspring of prostitutes. That's the Arabic. And what does that mean? They say it means the progeny of the wicked. But this is absolutely untrue. And this is usually argued, by the way, by Urdu speakers who don't have a clue about Arabic. So, not wishing to be hypocritical myself, I asked as many Arabic speakers and students of Arabic history and the Arabic language over history to clarify this for me, because, and I did this later, by the way, at the time, I went back and forth on this issue. And they said, beyond doubt, it means the offspring of prostitutes. He also used other words that made it very, very clear that he meant offspring of prostitutes. For example, he used the term Wald ul-Haram. Is everyone familiar with that? Okay, so I won't explain, but it means a similar sort of thing. And there's an Urdu word as well, which I probably don't want to repeat because it's really rude. But it starts with the word haram and ends with another word that starts with Z, right? And he also used that for some of his opponents. That makes it crystal clear what he meant. This was the moment for me that shocked me the most. This is when literally the hairs on the back of my neck rose up when I saw this. Because what I did was, I didn't believe the references I was reading. I went onto the official sites, but I also went onto some anti-sites. Sheikh Google is very dangerous, okay? If you're an Ahmadi and you're unemployed, yeah, and you use Sheikh Google, you're going to be in big trouble because you're going to find a lot of stuff out there that exposes the Ahmadiyya doctrine. And you're also going to find a lot of beautiful stuff on Islam that you wouldn't otherwise find. So I consulted Sheikh Google, and Sheikh Google came back with alhafiz.org, which was by a lovely, lovely man in Dubai called Dr. Rashid. Anyone heard of Dr. Rashid? I can't imagine anyone has. It's a very esoteric subject. In my tiny world of the Ahmadiyya awareness community, this guy's one of our heroes, right? So he documented a lot of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's writings. So I found this one reference that Mirza wrote to one of his opponents, the word lana, 1,000 times. And I mean numbered, right? So 1, lana, 2, lana, 3, lana, by hand, 1,000 times across. And I couldn't fit this all onto one slide. 5 pages. Lana, lana. Can you imagine sitting there writing numbered, lana, lana, 1,000 times? Now, has anyone seen the film The Shining? Anyone seen the film The Shining? I'm probably talking to the wrong audience, aren't I? Okay. We don't watch films, they're Muslims, right? So The Shining, let me tell you about The Shining. It's a film about a guy who goes to a hotel with his family, with his wife and child, and he starts to have a mental breakdown. Now, he's supposed to be writing a book, okay? This hotel is closed for the winter, he's supposed to be writing a book. This is a terrible spoiler, by the way, so if you haven't watched it and you were planning on watching it, you should cover your ears, right? So he's supposed to be writing this book. And his wife discovers after a few months that he's not been writing a book. He's been writing the same words over and over again. She finds a sheaf of papers like that thick. And it says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Now, I didn't believe this, okay? I didn't believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad could write Lana 1,000 times. Because I thought, what sane person does something like that? Just say it. I curse you 1,000 times and be done with it. You know, you shouldn't be open to cursing anyway. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad himself said that the cursing is not the style of a mu'min. And yet, he is alleged to have done this. So what I did something very unusual. I didn't read much Arabic at the time, but I followed the reference from Dr. Rashid's site. I went to Al-Islam, downloaded Ruhani Khazain, which is translated loosely as spiritual treasures. And believe me, there are not too many treasures in there except of the profane kind. And I searched for this reference. And on this one occasion, the line numbers and reference numbers matched up. And I saw in front of me this, Lana, I've read it 1,000 times. SubhanAllah, I was terrified. Why didn't no one tell me that about this guy's writing? So when this one reference matched up, and of course you can contextualize this any way you like and say, oh yeah, but you know, in the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah and the angels curse these people, and that's a lot more than 1,000 curses. Yeah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't write in the Qur'an 1,000 numbered lamas. That's the work of someone not in full possession of their faculties, in my humble opinion. You know, other people might disagree. But for me, this was a key moment. The other thing that really I thought was not becoming of a person of prophetic character. Who am I to judge, right? But the thing is, I had a valid comparison. I was able to compare with a wonderful example, the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because my love for him was there. You know, even as an Ahmadi, I watched The Message. That was my exposure to Islam. Okay, anyone watch The Message? Hands up if you watched The Message. Yeah, we all watched The Message. Finally, the right audience. Okay, so The Message for me was my exposure to Islam, and I loved that film. And you know, when I read a biography of the Prophet ﷺ, even to this day, you know, when I read the bit where he passes away in the arms of his beloved wife Aisha radiallahu anha, it still brings tears to my eyes to this day. The example of that man is just so profound. So I had a beautiful comparison. I was able to compare him to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and say, can this really be a man who claimed to be the second coming of God forgive me, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Every natural disaster that happened, he attributed to a sign for him. He was always saying that we should have a mutual cursing match to his opponent. He'd say, I tell you what, you invite the curse of Allah, me, I invite the curse of Allah on you, and whoever dies first, they're the loser, right? He was constantly doing this. And I didn't find that becoming of a prophet. Here's an interesting little factoid. He prophesied the death of 121 of his opponents. Basically, these are death threats. You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die in my lifetime. Eventually, the government of the time, which of course was the British Raj, because this was after the Raj intervened, they gagged him. They gave him a gagging order in the court of Lahore. And they said, you, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, you have to stop swearing at opponents, you have to stop forecasting the deaths of your opponents. And that's that. And also one of his opponents was also gagged at the same time. Can you imagine a prophet being gagged? I mean, I found this extraordinary. So if he has a revelation, so-called revelation, where he's claiming that one of his opponents is going to die, he's now not allowed to say anything about it because he's being gagged. So I found that extraordinary as well. You shouldn't be talking about the deaths of your opponents. Surely, if they're your opponents, you should pray for their guidance. You remember Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he prayed for one of the Umars to come to him. Yeah? How beautiful. How beautiful that he prayed the two most hideous enemies of Islam. He prayed that one of these strong men, come to Islam. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad didn't do that. He said, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. I found this really hard to handle. I thought, this is not my Islam. For me, this is not Islam. So all of these things were gradually chipping away at my iman in Ahmadiyya. And he's always talking about how his followers and his believers would get money, and he was going to get money in the post. If you read through Tadhkira, which is a compilation of his revelations. You'll find it online at the alislam.org website. You'll see that it's full of death prophecies, curses, I'm going to get money, I'm going to get kids, this is going to happen to me, earthquake's going to happen to you. And I'm thinking, I don't feel spiritually uplifted by this, you know? In fact, it's giving me a bad taste in my mouth. This is my experience of reading the literature. The most shameful episode of all was the Muhammadi Begum episode. Does anyone know who Muhammadi Begum is? You don't? Good. Okay, so this is a new story for you. Is anyone familiar with the story of Muhammadi Begum and Mirza Sultan Ahmad? Okay, so this would really shock you, brothers and sisters. It will really shock you. Muhammadi Begum was the daughter of a relative of Mirza Sultan Ahmad. This relative, Mirza Ahmad Beg, came to Mirza Sultan Ahmad asking Mirza to sign some property over because a female relative had lost a husband. A husband had kind of disappeared. And what happened was that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said, let me think about this. And he came back to Mirza Ahmad Beg and said, I tell you what, if you let me marry your daughter, I'll sign this paper for you. Imagine this. Imagine this. Say one of your relatives comes to you, right, and says, one of my female relatives is in financial difficulty, her husband has disappeared for a couple of years, please sign this, it means that she will get access to the property. Would you not help that relative? He says no. He says, if you let me marry your daughter, if you let me marry your 15-year-old daughter, he's in his 50s at the time. I don't have a problem with the age thing. I'm just saying this is one aspect of it, you know? In Islam, we say that it's acceptable to marry beyond puberty. So that's not such a big issue. We shouldn't make a big issue of it. But if you add that to a bunch of other issues as well, it becomes a very interesting picture. So if you marry your daughter to me, then I will sign this for you. Mirza Ahmad Beg is a Muslim gentleman, and he exercised his right of refusal. He didn't think that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad would be a suitable match for his daughter, and he decided to reject the invitation. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad proceeded to go on a 10-year tirade against Mirza Ahmad Beg and his family, and Muhammadi Begum and her family, in an attempt to prophesy that she would come into his wedlock. Here's one of his prophecies. Then God the Merciful gave me the glad tidings, saying, your house, i.e. Mirza's house, will be filled with barakah, and I will complete my bounties on you, and from the blessed ladies who will come to you after this, your family will grow greatly. In other words, his second wife was Nusrat Jahan Begum. And he's claiming that God says that you'll get these blessed ladies coming to you afterwards into your household, and your family will grow greatly. Of course, he never got married after that, so you know this revelation failed like most of the others. Muhammadi Begum eventually went on to marry the man that her father had suggested, which was Mirza Sultan Ahmad. Now, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad had tried everything possible to stop this marriage from happening. He wrote to the relatives, he wrote really strong, threatening letters, you know. It started off begging and pleading. If you're a prophet, right, and you're saying this is going to happen, you don't need to do this, do you? You don't need to threaten people, you don't need to coerce people. But he wrote some really pretty strong letters, and they're all available online, you can see these. So what happened? Muhammadi Begum went on to marry Mirza Sultan Ahmad, and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad divorced his first wife, who was kind of against the whole idea, who was related to Muhammadi Begum. He forced his son, Fazl Ahmad, to divorce his wife, Izzat Bibi, because they were against it as well. He disinherited his other son, Sultan Ahmad. Now, we're supposed in Islam not to break the ties of kith and kin. So, if he was a prophet, he would not have done this. And he broke all relations with all his family members who were involved in the marriage of Muhammadi Begum and Mirza Sultan Ahmad. He had a dream in which he saw Muhammadi Begum naked. Okay? And he publicized this dream. This is an advert, a commercial. For the love of God, a commercial where you're advertising a naked woman. Okay, it was not in a sexual way, but still, the honor of a Muslim. Muslims hold this up really, really highly. It's very important for us, right? We respect our women. We should do. We love our women. We should do. We honor and respect them. we would, let's say, God forbid, you had a dream about the Garamara lady. To the brothers, I'm asking this. Would you write an advert about it? Would you publicize this? My God. So, for 10 years he chased Muhammadi Begum. She was married at the time. He chased her through a series of adverts, prophecies. Oh, he'll die. Mirza Sultan Ahmad will die. Muhammadi Begum will come, she'll eventually come into my wedlock. This person will die. That person will die. For 10 years the husband got death threats. He said this prophecy was from God. I say again and again that the essence of the prophecy, the death of the son-in-law of Ahmad Beg, is assuredly predestined. Wait for it. If I am a liar, this prophecy will not be fulfilled and my death will come. Conclusion. He died in 1908. Muhammadi Begum's marriage went on for decades. She died in 65. Her husband died in the 40s. So what does that tell you? Who was giving him this revelation? For me, remember at the time I'm reading this account, and I'm thinking, this doesn't sound like a prophet to me. You know, so this is gradually chipping away. I'll come to some of the defenses later, by the way. Other things that I found really difficult to deal with were some of the things that I perceived to be a blasphemy. So, for example, this is one of the things that I discovered. The word of God revealed to me, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad this is his claim, okay? The word of God revealed to me contains the expressions on whose strength I could establish much more easily than Jesus my claim to divinity. He's saying that he's got so many revelations, such powerful revelations, that he could much more easily than Jesus say he was God. Now, we're Muslims. We know that Jesus never claimed to be God. In fact, hands up, those who watch Dr. Zakir Naik. I want to see a lot of hands go up. You all watch Dr. Zakir Naik, right? Fantastic. So he is very famous for saying over and over again, give me one, and of course before him Sheikh Ahmadiyya, give me one absolutely unqualified verse from the Bible where Jesus claims to be God. And no one has been able to accept this challenge. Because Jesus, even in the Bible, doesn't claim to be God. So how can Mirza Ghulam Ahmad say this? Now a prophet would know this. Yeah? You'd expect a prophet to know the basics, the ABC of Islam. You have to remember, brothers and sisters, at this time, I didn't know the basics of Islam. The basics of Islam for me were the message. That was the basics of Islam for me. Okay? That's all I knew about Islam. Some more examples of blasphemy. Okay? And some of this you're going to find quite shocking, so please forgive me for repeating this. He says, these are all his revelations. He claims that God has said this to him. He claims that God has said to me, you, O Mirza, are to me like my unity and uniqueness. That you, Mirza, are like Allah's Tawheed. This is what he's saying. Another one. You are to me like my throne, al-Arsh, right? You are to me like my sons. Does this not shock you? It shocked me, I tell you. Allah has preferred you over everything. What? Over Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Are you kidding? I couldn't accept this, you know. Many thrones have descended from heaven, but your throne has been placed above all others. Above the throne of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even if he had a throne, he didn't. Lived very humbly, didn't he? Oh my Ahmad, you are my purpose. That's really, I found that jarring, you know. You are to me in the status of my progeny. So like my children. He's saying that God is saying that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is like God's children. Progeny. Progeny doesn't just mean metaphorical kids. Progeny means offspring. It's disgusting. You are from me and I am from you. Now, if you're an Ahmadi reading this, right, and you have any connection with Islam at all, alarm bells are going off in your head, right? So at this point, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, you know, I didn't even know what Tawheed meant at the time, as an Ahmadi. This is my fault. I can't entirely blame the Ahmadiyya for this. I'm just talking about my experiences, yeah? You know, they do have a regimented training scheme where they train the youngsters. So, you know, credit where credit's due. They're not as, alhamdulillah, as blessed as we are. They don't have the same level of recitation. They don't have the same level of iman. They do teach their kids stuff. But this is stuff that I didn't know. I didn't know what Tawheed meant, okay? So, but I did know that God would never say that I am from you to a human being. And the one that shocked me the most, I saw God Almighty personified as a human being in a vision. He put his arm around my neck. Okay, when you pick your jaws up off the floor, I'll go on to something even more worrying to me, which was what eventually caused me to leave. But first, let me quote his cousin, who was a Christian priest. I think this guy was a Christian priest, yet there were two people in his life, and I'm thinking this guy was the Christian priest. And he says about Mirza Sultan Ahmad's tampering with the Qur'an, because he constantly talked about getting re-revelations of the Qur'an to him. He says, if he, Mirza, were a follower of Muhammad, he would not abuse the family of the Prophet, nor would he so amend the Qur'an as to virtually abrogate it. This is coming from an enemy of Islam. An enemy of Islam is saying that the blasphemy of Mirza Sultan Ahmad is shocking. The other thing he did was he twisted Quranic verses. So, for example, there is an ayah, and you'll forgive me, my knowledge of the deen is rubbish. I really do need some training very, very badly. But there's one verse where Maryam is referred to, and she went to a date palm tree and she shook the tree, right, for the dates to drop. And in the pains of childbirth. Right? Everyone familiar with this verse? You're probably much more familiar with it than I am. My apologies, my sincere apologies. I don't claim to be any kind of scholar. I'm just a very, very ordinary Muslim with very little knowledge. But Mirza Ghulam Ahmad reapplied this verse to him. He said God revealed to him the same verse and said the pains of childbirth drove him to the date palm tree. He shook. He's talking about himself. He's giving birth. He's in childbirth. And he's saying that the Qur'an is twisted like this to suit him. You should tremble with fear if you're an Ahmadi and you read this, you know. This terrifies me. I remember speaking with some of my friends at the time, Ahmadi friends. Two Ahmadi friends at the time. One of them said, it's metaphorical, it's okay. And the other one was like this. He didn't know where to put his head, you know. But I was the first one to leave. I got good news for you, brothers and sisters. Those same two brothers who were my Ahmadi friends there have since come back to Islam. Allahu Akbar. Took them years, but they came back. Because there's a limit to how much you can take. If you love Islam, if you have a love of Islam, if you have love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if, as we're commanded to love Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam over our own family, it's a very hard concept to grasp. Remember, I was a secular kind of guy, you know. I had belief, but, you know, this is not something that I found very easy to relate to, that you could love a man from the past more than your own family. It takes a lot of time before you can grasp that and understand just how important it is. Because if you don't, nothing else falls into place. The way I explain this to my children, who incidentally have come to Islam as well, they didn't used to live with me. Remember, I was living on my own. They live with me now, alhamdulillah, and they've come to Islam. God bless them. And please pray for their continuing guidance. The way I explain life to them is this. So, your life is like a net, you know, like a mesh net. If you hold it up the right way, it will fall untangled. And the way you have to hold it is you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right at the very top. And if you do that, the rest of your life falls neatly untangled into place. And if you don't, if you hold it up from the middle, or you hold it up from somewhere else, soon it will start to get very, very tangled. So this for me, the whole playing with the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I found very problematic. The whole behavior of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, that his character did not stack up in any way to the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That for me was a big shock. So, what else can I tell you about the Ahmadiyya? What do? They claim at various times to have a membership of 200 million. Can you believe there are 200 million Ahmadis in the world? Where are they? Does anyone know where they are? I'll tell you where they are. They're in Morden. That's true. They are in Morden, and more of them moving into Morden. Remember, I don't mean to mock, okay? All I mean to mock at is the number, the claim of 200 million. And the believers believe it. I believed it. I was going around I remember telling my friends, 200 million of us, we're everywhere. How come we're not on the news? And this is when I was an Ahmadi. I was thinking this. The cognitive dissonance, it was pricking in my head even at that time. Yeah, about 200 million. But how come no one's heard of us? All of these voices in trying to right my thinking, even at that time. Now, the real figures are much more interesting. Anyone know how many Ahmadis there are in the UK? I know. You know how I know? Because their official figures were leaked to me by someone on the inside. It's around 19,500 in the UK. Over half of those people are in Morden. So I wasn't joking when I said most of them are in Morden. Okay? Morden, Sutton, that kind of area. Over half of them are there. More and more are moving in there. That is becoming their stronghold. That is the equivalent of, for them, Rabwa in the UK. Okay, do you know about the village Rabwa or Chenab Nagar in Pakistan? That is where their base was for a long time after they moved from Qadiani. The movement was founded in Qadiani, by the way, in the 1800s by Mirza Sultan Ahmad. After partition, they moved over to Rabwa in the Punjab in Pakistan. That was renamed to Chenab Nagar. Then, since then, their base has been primarily in London in the UK. Of course, as you know, a lot of Ahmadis in Morden. Now, like me, a lot of Ahmadis don't know about their own beliefs. Like me, a lot of Ahmadis have cognitive dissonance about their beliefs. But more and more are coming back to Islam. More and more are engaging with us. Islam is big news. We hear of Islamophobia all the time, right? It's in the news all the time. Islam is in the news. So, just because of the interesting thing is, because of the Islamophobia, the Ahmadis themselves get to relate to Muslims on different levels. On one level, it's still the fear of Muslims, they really are terrorists. But then the others, the kids who are mixing with us in the colleges and the universities and the schools, they're realizing we're not terrorists actually, but some of us ain't half bad. And that, alhamdulillah, is really nice. As long as we continue to get this, we promote the best of ourselves to Ahmadis. Inshallah, they'll come to Islam. They'll come, inshallah. Just make dua for these people. Because most of them don't know. The leadership is flawed, yes, but most of the Ahmadis don't know. And most of them are very, very decent people. Inshallah, you'll find that a lot of their beliefs correspond with your own. It's just these things that they don't know too much about. They've not been told too much about. Some people are hardcore, yes, you'll have to do more debating with them. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. 19,500 in the UK, they claim 50,000. They claim 200 million in the world. The figure is more likely to be 2 million. In fact, I've revised that down since I originally wrote this presentation. And I think the figure is more likely to be 500,000 in the world. Okay? There is a tendency to do this. So, for example, in 1902, they claimed a membership of 70,000, but the census said that there were 1,113 of them in Qadiani. Remember, this was before the death of Mirza Sultan Ahmad, so the movement would have been at quite a peak. So they claimed 70,000, but the census says 1,113. And Qadiani was, of course, the center of Ahmadiyya at the time. So 10,000 at that time would have been, even 10,000 would have been a really liberal estimate, right? So a 7 times exaggeration back in 1902, and they continued that trend. Recently they claimed growths of up to 80 million members in a year. From where? Go to any country in the world and see if you can find a 20% Ahmadiyya membership. It doesn't exist. In fact, the place where they're able to gain any kind of foothold at all is in the West. And even in the West, there are not that many of them. Most of the growth is organic. Organic growth means, through the natural expansion of their families. Yeah? And most of the new generation, they don't buy this Ahmadiyya stuff. They really don't. They see it as a cult. They see it as something very destructive. They don't see it as the haqq. And some of them are going astray. And some of them are not. Some of them are coming to Islam. Some of them are doing it secretly. So later on I'll talk about Takfeer and how Muslims need to be very, very careful about that, because sometimes some of these people are Muslims in disguise. They're just not allowed to come out and do it because they would destroy their families. More stuff. Yalash. Yalash is one of my favourite Mirza Sultan Ahmad revelations, because it just goes to show his mindset. He wanted to one-up Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wanted stuff that the other prophets didn't get, right? He wanted his own area. So he claimed this revelation. He says, while I was engaged upon the compilation of this book, I received the revelation in Urdu. Yalash is a name of God himself. This is a new word which is not found in this form in the Qur'an or Hadith or in any dictionary. It has been disclosed to me that it connotes Yala Sharik, and then the translators notes, O thou without an associate. Now, some questions might arise, and I'm going to cover those very quickly now. Why was this name, if it really was a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why was it not revealed to the last prophet? Yeah? The calling tool Ya simply cannot be used in this way as part of a proper name in Arabic. You don't go, oh, no associate song. It's simply nonsensical. You don't incorporate it as part of a proper name. You know, so for example, if my name is Shahid and someone goes Ya Shahid, I can't now be called Ya Shahid. Otherwise, if someone wants to call me, they go Ya Shahid. Yeah, and then that becomes my name, and I'm suddenly Ya Shahid. If someone says Ya Shahid, you know, it just goes on and on. You don't incorporate. In Arabic, it makes no sense, right? I'm not an Arabic speaker, by the way, and there must be some Arabic speakers in here. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So you can correct me as well if you like. I don't mind being corrected. I was corrected very heavily in 2004 by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm quite happy to continue to be corrected to this day. Why is the translation so deceptive? After all, Yala Sharik simply means O no associate. Well, if you want to say O thou without an associate, you would say Ya man la sharika lah in Arabic. You wouldn't say Yala Sharik. Okay? Never mind Yalash, but the expression Yala Sharik has never appeared in any form in Arabic at any point in history. Why? Because it's nonsense. The names of Allah are part of the Islamic tradition. They're part of our lexicon. They're part of our dictionary. They're part of our faith. Yeah? When the deen was complete, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were complete as well. We don't start to add things to the deen now. So that's another very, very good reason. That reason in itself is sufficient to declare Ahmadiyya as a new religion. Now, if they clearly separate themselves and say, yeah, we're a new religion, we accept Islam as our core, but we are a new religion, no problem. You know, Muslims wouldn't have a problem. The problem Muslims have with Ahmadiyya is they are the only religious group who claim to be Islam, the true Islam, whilst kicking all of the other Muslims out of Islam. I'm sorry, but you've got your own prophet, you know, you've got your own set of beliefs. By all means, call yourself a new religion. We Muslims have no problem with that. We'll deal with you in very friendly terms. But don't call yourself Islam, because that's not correct. Our deen was complete, yours is not. You say you have your own interpretation, and that is a correct interpretation. Fine, but you must separate. This is the way the Muslims view the Ahmadiyya. Other things that I found really difficult were his abuses of Isa alayhi salam. I could go into this in quite some detail, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to give you a couple of very, very quick quotes. This is what he wrote about Isa alayhi salam. And I'll tell you some of the Ahmadiyya rebuttals as well. The root cause of all the damage that alcohol consumption has had on Europeans was that Isa alayhi salam used to drink alcohol, perhaps because of some disease or an old habit. A man who drinks wine so long as he lives and likes the company of women of dubious character, sinners and drunkards, does not present an example worthy of emulation. Don't you know that manliness and virility are praiseworthy attributes of men? Being a eunuch is not a commendable quality, just as being deaf and dumb are not commendable, and on and on and on. It's disgusting, okay? Now, the Ahmadiyya defense is that he is referring to the biblical Jesus, okay? That is the Ahmadiyya defense. That he's just attacking the biblical Jesus. I'm sorry, this is no way to give da'wah. This is no way to deal with the Ahli Kitab. We don't do that as Muslims. The other thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very, very clear to us in the Qur'an. Don't mock their gods, lest in their ignorance they mock Allah. And Isa alayhi salam is considered a god by the Christians, by the Trinitarian Christians. So when you mock Isa alayhi salam, when you mock Jesus, right? For a Christian, you are mocking their God. It's completely forbidden in Islam. So on every single count, this behavior was absolutely unacceptable by Muslim standards. And yet, having made all of these criticisms, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claimed to be a perfect mirror, a perfect image of Isa alayhi salam. Why would you want to model such a character if these are the things that you're saying about him? Okay, so Nonsensical Revelations. These were his English revelations. He had revelations in many languages, by the way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Qur'an, and this is an approximate translation, We have not sent messengers except in the language of his peoples, right? So Mirza Sultan Ahmad did not have prophecies in just Punjabi. He had it in Urdu, he had it in English, he had it in Arabic, he had it in Sanskrit, he had it in Hebrew. Hebrew, yes. But English, my favorite subject. Now, I've been told off for mocking, I've made videos about this, right? And I've been told off for mocking the accent. Because I say, we can what we will do. I do that for two reasons, okay? It's not mocking. Believe it or not, that is my accent. How many of you speak with a bit of an accent? The accent I'm speaking to you with now is not my accent. This is a put-on that I learned when I was 5 years old. I put this accent on, but it's become so familiar to me, it's become a way of speaking. This is the way I normally speak with my parents. I'm not kidding. This is how I speak with my parents. Right? So they thought I was mocking them. But I was actually speaking the way a Punjabi would. And the reason I'm doing that is because you will then understand the mindset. Because people who come from the subcontinent, God bless them, because I came from there as well, right? They have a certain way of speaking. Our uncles and aunties sometimes make these interesting grammatical mistakes, right? And fine, absolutely no problem at all. They speak better English than I speak Urdu. So they have more praise, they're more praiseworthy than I am by any stretch of the imagination. But you know when you hear this that these are mistakes. But you leave them, right? Not a problem. No problem. I'm sure I make millions of mistakes. My mum, bless her, she never laughs at me when I speak Punjabi or Urdu to her. I must make mess up after mess up when I'm speaking to her. She doesn't have a go. But here's the interesting thing. Where are revelations from? Who can answer this? Where do revelations come from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's one other place revelations can come from, brothers and sisters. Who's the other person who can give revelations? Who's the other person who whispers? Shaitan. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make mistakes in English grammar. We can what we will do is nonsense. We can what we will do is absolute nonsense. But you can imagine an auntie or uncle saying it. I can imagine, well, my mum actually speaks very good English, so she wouldn't make a mistake like that. She would say, we can do what we will. Right? But we can what we will do is nonsense. I've given a very detailed English grammatical explanation of why this is nonsense on my website. So if anyone's interested in the exact English grammatical reasons as to why this is nonsense, I've gone into that. Okay? But any 7-year-old in England knows that this is nonsense. Another one. God is coming by his army. He is with you to kill enemy. This doesn't sound too bad with the accent, right? He is with you to kill enemy. This is how my mother might say it. This is how my uncles might say it. Remember, this is my accent. This is how I speak with my family. I speak with my brother and sister like this. And they can vouch for that. By the way, brothers and sisters, I'm very pleased to tell you also that my sister came back to Islam too. God bless her. Please make dua for her. So, if I was speaking to my sister, I would say, he is with you to kill enemy. I'd probably be grammatical, but that's how it sounds. The point being that when you say it in that accent, it doesn't sound so bad, because you can imagine an uncle or auntie speaking in that tone. But in English, you don't say he is with you to kill enemy. You say he is with you to kill the enemy, or he is with you to kill enemies. Right? This is the correct English. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make mistakes in revelation. Now, Mirza Sultan Ahmad's defenders would say that, yeah, but, you know, a scribe made this error. You allowed a scribe to make an error in the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What did the Prophet ﷺ get told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he was trying to speak quickly to remember the revelation? Who knows? MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Now, if I'm correct, I don't understand Arabic, but when he's referring to the same verse I'm thinking about, right? So he's saying, don't move your tongue too hastily to remember. Allah will help you remember. It's Allah's responsibility to preserve his wahi. So, let's forget about that argument as well. And the one that convinced me that this so-called wahi came from Shaitan was, get this one, brothers and sisters, words of God, not can exchange. Now, if that isn't Satan playing tricks with you, what is? It says in his books, words of God, not can exchange. So what he's trying to say is, the words of God can't change, right? That's what he's trying to say. Or one word of God cannot be exchanged with another word of God, for example. But what he said instead is, words of God not can exchange. And in one of the devil's most amazing tricks, he's transposed the can and the not. Because he was actually wanting to say, words of God cannot exchange. But in the Revelation it's written down, words of God not can exchange. Now that to me is a trick of Satan. He's having a laugh. He's having a laugh with this guy. That's the way I saw it. There's no other way of seeing it. So, coming back to a very, very serious matter, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about such things? He says in Surat al-Baqara verse 79, woe then to those who write the book with their hands and then say, this is from Allah, so that they may take for it a small price. We'll come to price in a bit. Therefore, woe to them for what their hands have written, and woe to them for what they earn. More things that led me to realize Mirza Sultan Ahmad was not on the truth. He had a challenge with a priest, Abdullah Atham, Christian priest, opponent of Islam. And he made a death prophecy about him. Mirza Sultan Ahmad, as he did, made a death prophecy about him. And he said, in 15 months you're going to die. Abdullah Atham eventually went into hiding. There were all sorts of things going on with guns being thrown around and what have you. Come 15 months, Abdullah Atham is still alive. The night of the 15 months, all of Mirza Sultan Ahmad's scholars are sat with him. They're all doing tasbih. They're praying, they're going, oh Ya Allah, let Atham die. Oh Ya Allah, let Atham die. Oh, please. Please. Look, one of our opponents today is Richard Dawkins, right? He does not like Muslims. Doesn't like Muslims. Do we want him to die? No. Mate, have a long life, you know? The next life is eternal. When Allah's judgment comes, it is severe. We should be terrified of the judgment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shouldn't be inviting death upon our enemies. Death is nothing. This life is a trial for us, brothers and sisters. This is a trial. That's all it is. We're being tested. We shouldn't be wishing for the deaths of our opponents. And for him to claim to be a prophet and to be doing, and his followers are sitting there going, Ya Allah, let Atham die, Ya Allah, let Atham die. Sitting there, literally just be doing that. Eventually, he sent 2 youngsters off to a well with chickpeas, which he'd done tasbih over. He said, throw these behind you over your shoulder into the well, and then walk away without looking back. And this will kind of help him die or something. They did this. Next morning, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad comes in, beaming smile to his followers. And you're going to love this. Beaming smile to his followers. God has given me the good news that he has repented. I mean, people do buy this. People do buy this. You know? But you look at the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you tell me if you can find anything like this in the life of a true prophet, of any true prophet, that they would behave in this manner, that they would get people to sit around in a circle and pray for the death of an opponent in a given time scale. Doesn't prove a thing. He kept prophesying that he would have sons and he would have daughters instead. You know, here's the other thing in Islam. We don't want one over the other. But he was very kind of traditional, old school in that respect, you know, which is not correct Islam, that he would prefer sons over daughters. And of course he was humiliated very badly in the whole Muhammadi Begum episode. And I'll tell you why. Because he only stopped having revelations about Muhammadi Begum when one of his opponents published a revelation about Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's wife. One of his opponents, the editor of a newspaper in Lahore called Ishaq Sunnah, published a revelation, fake revelation, saying that one of my so-and-so friends, one of these Maulvis, has had a revelation that they're going to get married to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's wife. Guess what? From that point on, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad stopped having revelations about Muhammadi Begum, a married woman. Just like that. The tap of prophecy turned off. And that, to me, is not an example of prophethood. Okay? So there are many, many examples like this. So, what do Ahmadi say? What are their complaints to me and to other people who have left Ahmadiyya and come back to Islam? They say your references are wrong. No, they're not. They're not wrong. I've checked them again and again and again. My references are correct. Alhamdulillah. The references of Dr. Rashid are correct. The references of Irshad.org are correct. The references on Ahmadi beliefs are correct. The references on the cult.info are correct. Our references are correct. Why? Because, alhamdulillah, we will go with the haqq wherever it leads us. We are not scared. We are not scared that one thing will show Mirza Sultan Ahmad to be true. You know, if he was the Messiah, Muslims would have accepted him. Why didn't we? Because he wasn't the Messiah. Because he was a liar. He was one of the 30 Dajjal that the Prophet ﷺ prophesied. He said, there will come to you 30 impostors in my ummah, all claiming to be a prophet. But none of them will be prophets. I'm the last prophet. There is no prophet after me. He was one of those. He was one of those impostors who claimed prophethood. So references are not wrong. You're quoting out of context is a common complaint. Well, you know, I thought about this. And actually, despite really heavy contextualization, makes no difference. In fact, sometimes, when you read 2 or 3 pages before and after, it makes it look even worse. Actually makes it look worse. That's not an authentic book. Well, this is where it helps if you're doing any kind of outreach to Ahmadis, to read their own books, to read Takfeer, which is available on their website, and has all the references directly from them. Read the 5 volumes of The Essence of Islam. And there are many others, Review of Religions, you know, old copies of that. That was a periodical that was quite popular. Use their literature, by all means. Use Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's own writings. You don't need anything else. Use that, use the Qur'an and Sunnah, inshallah, you will be fine. They say that the same accusations that were made against Mirza Ghulam Ahmad were also made against the Prophet ﷺ. That's not actually true. Because, as far as I'm aware, the Prophet ﷺ was never accused of drinking alcohol or taking opium. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad did actually ask his followers to buy tonic wine for him. Did include alcohol in the so-called medicine that he prescribed for other people. I've seen the medicine. I've seen the actual books that show the ingredients, and alcohol is the primary ingredient. Why as a prophet would you make a medicine that contained alcohol? There was opium in one of his famous Ahmadiyya Viagra medicines. He came up with this kind of Viagra substitute. I kid you not. I'm not going to explain to you what that is, but basically it had opium in it. So, these kind of accusations, God forbid, were never made against the Prophet ﷺ. And those accusations are made against our Prophet ﷺ. We have very, very good answers indeed. They're very satisfying. You know, we can totally understand whenever an attack is made. We understand the defense is perfectly logical, perfectly sensible. There is no weakness in our deen. Why are we growing so fast? Alhamdulillah, despite massive persecution. Despite massive persecution. Why, when they're trying to have all kinds of hearings about us in America, are we the fastest growing religion in America? Why, when our cemeteries are being destroyed, when our mosques are having bricks thrown through the windows, when our Muslim sisters are having the niqab torn from their faces and beaten up in the streets, why is Islam the fastest growing religion in the UK? Not Ahmadiyya, Islam. Why are we the fastest growing religion in the West? Is it because we're just reproducing faster than the others? Well, maybe partly, but actually it's because people are coming to Islam in droves. Every single day people are coming to Islam, alhamdulillah, and they will continue to come to Islam. They won't go to Ahmadiyya. Shall I tell you how many people have come to Ahmadiyya in the last 15 years? 1,000. 1,000 in the UK. And out of those, 500 went back. And out of the 500 that stayed, many had come from abroad and were already Ahmadis, and some were moving around inside the UK. Okay? That's how many people they get on board. So people don't want to come to these kind of things. They do get the odd people coming in. They go as quickly as they come. I know several of these people myself. People don't stay. People stay when they come to Islam. We've talked about the reference to the biblical Jesus, and they also say he's not really claiming prophethood. Well, I would say go and read the book Removal of a Misunderstanding and Lecture CR Court. which are available from their website, and see how clear he makes the claim to prophethood. The other thing is, their website is alislam.org. Very often on the front page of their website, you will see a prophet to unite humanity in the latter days. So the claim is made very, very clearly. This is why I eventually left, by the way. This is the last straw. I'll give you the story of this very quickly. I said very quickly quite a few times, and I've been ages, right? I'll do this quickly, because this would otherwise take an hour in itself. I eventually plucked up the guts to contact one of these scary terrorist bearded mullahs, right? As an Ahmadi. I wrote to him anonymously, and I said, listen, how do I know these references are correct? I'm leaning towards Islam, but how do I know this is correct? How do I know Ahmadiyya? You know, I've done all the reading. I don't think Ahmadi is right. Am I making the wrong decision? He said, well, if you want to talk to me, one of his students wrote back to me, if you want to talk to the Sheikh, he asks first that you read Surat al-Baqara, first 5 verses, every day for 3 days. And when you've done that, we'll talk. I said, okay, I accept your condition. I still have the emails, by the way, if anyone's interested in seeing them. I said, I accept your condition. So I started reading Surat al-Baqarah, first 5 verses, every day. By the second day, I took my Shahada, I wrote back to him and said, listen, I don't need to speak to you anymore. I've come back to Islam, alhamdulillah. Why? Why did Surat al-Baqarah, first 5 verses, have this effect on me? I'll read the English translation. Alif Lam Mim. This book, there is no doubt in it. It is a guide to those who guard against evil. Those who believe in the unseen and keep up prayer and spend out of what we have given them. And who believe in that which has been revealed to you and that which was revealed before you, and they are sure of the hereafter. They are on a right course from their Lord, and these it is that shall be successful. So, I read this over and over again, but what is it in this that should bring me to Islam? I was thinking, you know, that's interesting. Because that wasn't actually what I was reading. I was reading the Ahmadiyya version, and the Ahmadiyya version says, in the name of Allah, the Gracious and Merciful, Alif Lam Mim. This is a perfect book, there is no doubt in it, it is a guide for the righteous, who believe in the unseen and observe prayer and spend out of what we have provided for them, and who believe in that which has been revealed to thee, and that which was revealed before thee, and they have firm faith in what is yet to come. It is they who follow the guidance of their Lord, and it is they who shall prosper. I was reading the word akhirah, and I was reading this, what is yet to come. So I went to another translation, the one that I read to you earlier, and I realized to my horror that they didn't match. They did not match. Why did they not match? Why would they change the word, the translation of al-akhirah? What does al-akhirah mean, everybody?
The end.
The next life, the hereafter, right? Everyone knows what al-akhirah is. But they changed it to say, those who have firm faith in what is yet to come. Now, another thing that struck me was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making a deal with me, right? He's saying, you do this, and you'll be successful in the next life. And I thought, you know what, that's a pretty complete contract. I like that. I like this contract. It's really simple. I get this. But I don't get about accepting this guy, Mirza Sultan Ahmad. That's not mentioned here. And there's nothing about something yet to come. But hold on, the Ahmadiyya said there is something yet to come. So when I realized that here is an organization that is prepared to tamper with the words of the most sacred text in the world, what else is there that they would not be prepared to do? That's when I took my shahada, and that's when I came to Islam. So, my life after the Ahmadiyya. It was quite something, that realization. And I felt a wonderful lightness. Suddenly, the deen became a lot more simple for me. There was a lot more depth to it, but it became a lot more easy to understand. You know, the deal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes with us, the covenant, is very straightforward. You don't have to do an awful lot to be successful. But you know, we human beings are weak, so we we do some things that we shouldn't. And I continue. So please pray for me to be continually guided and to move closer and closer to truth, inshallah. So the thing I found was that there was this freedom in Islam. There was absolutely no confusion. Nobody needed to change anything or alter anything or confuse anything to make me accept something. There was an openness. People willing to discuss things with me. People willing to clarify things to me. No uncle saying, "Beta, don't talk about this." "No, beta, we don't talk about this." No. I didn't have any of that. I'd have people saying, "Yeah, come on, let's talk." To me, this is a breath of fresh air. SubhanAllah, someone willing to talk about this difficult issue. There are lots of issues in Islam, like questions about, well, what about this, what about this, what about that, what about this? You can imagine, I was like a 3-year-old child. Why, constantly asking these questions, and I'm always getting answers like patient parents. Alhamdulillah, people giving me answers and answers. To this day, I ask Muslims and I get answers. It's wonderful, that kind of openness. You never had this in Ahmadiyya. You always get confused. And a lot of the Ahmadis today, by the way, are not satisfied with this. Ahmadi youngsters are not satisfied with this anymore. They will not take this nonsense anymore. They have access to the internet, and they're told to stay away from it. But they do go on the internet. Kids will do what they're going to do, and they find out. I found one of my favourite experiences was I got a call, a phone call from a Maulana who said, "Are you going to Jummah?" I never used to go to Jummah before. Do I have to go? Yes, it's an obligation on every Muslim male. You've got to go every Friday. Okay, I suppose I've got to go to Jummah then. So, well, where do I go? You have to remember, the only place we had before was South London, right? There wasn't Morden at the time, but it was Putney. So Putney was the only place you could ever go to do Jummah. So no one went, basically, unless there was a holiday, and then everybody descended into Putney and turned up there. So I called up. I said, "Where do I go?" He says, "There's a mosque 3 minutes walk from where you live." Fantastic. Okay, so I went. And this Jummah was beautiful. It was the first time I'd ever been to a Jummah where I understood what was being said, because the Imam there gave the Jummah khutbah in English and in Arabic. So that was the first for me, hearing a khutbah in Arabic and English. And he gave me a khutbah I will never forget. He said, the most interesting thing to me, he said, "You know what? In Islam, there is no such thing as depression." Right, that was really big for me. Well, what do you mean? I've been depressed a lot, What do you mean there's no... Well, in Islam, Muslims live their lives in a state of sabr or shukr. You always live in one of these two states. When you have difficult times, you're being tested, but that is a blessing in itself, because it is taking away some of your sin from you. And when you're in good times, you're continually remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you know that these blessings can be taken away from you at any time. They're temporary. SubhanAllah, this was the most beautiful khutbah I'd ever heard in my life. Before, I'd been used to sitting there for an hour and a half, listening to one of the Mirza family going on and on about persecution. So-and-so had their shop smashed, so-and-so happened, we're going to be victorious, blah, 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 whatever in Urdu, And we'd all be falling asleep. All the people I knew would be falling asleep, because none of it would be relevant to us. And here was a khutbah I could relate to immediately, and was useful to me in my everyday life immediately. But another beautiful experience of Jummah, after coming to Islam, you see what I'm doing here? I'm contrasting the life in Ahmadiyya, when none of us ever went to Jummah, with the life in Islam, where the first khutbah I went to has stayed with me to this day and guides me to this day. The beauty, the difference, it's just spectacular that overnight your whole way of life can be transformed by Islam. SubhanAllah, I don't think many people here can appreciate that, because you have it from birth. It's such a gift, such a beautiful gift. And this is another beautiful thing. One day I went to Paddington, and I feared, I was living in Fulham at the time, I wouldn't be able to get back in time for Jummah. And I was really upset. And I'm walking down the street with my head low, thinking, I'm going to miss a Jummah. I don't want to miss a Jummah. So walking up the street, and suddenly in the side street in Paddington, a whole load of these dark-skinned gents streaming out from this building. I'm thinking, hold on a minute. So I asked the brother, "Is this a masjid?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Is Jummah over?" He said, "Yes, brother, Jummah is over, but we have a second Jummah." SubhanAllah, the first time in my life I'd ever been to a place where they had a second Jummah. And now I know of masajid that have a third one. SubhanAllah, for a Jummah. You know, the attendance in the Ahmadiyya places is really poor. For example, we found a recent internal leaked report that Fajr in the Morden place of worship had a 5% attendance. And they were trying to get these numbers up. And so they had these kind of breakfast club sort of activities to try and get the numbers up. We don't need to do that in Islam. We don't need to do these kind of weird activities to get people to believe in the deen, to do the right thing, to do what they are commanded. But these are the kind of things that what happens is that in Ahmadiyya, and credit to some of the people, because some of the people are sincere, you know, and they see that something is not right and want to do something about it, and they're misguided in a certain way, but they're good people, and we should call these people to Islam. We should never remember that these people were stolen from us. 100 years ago, a man called Mirza Sultan Ahmad came to the east of Punjab and stole the iman of some of these forefathers of mine and of other friends. And it is our responsibility as Muslims to invite them back, to undo the damage done by Mirza Sultan Ahmad. So it was beautiful. You know, I went into the second Jummah, and I enjoyed Jummah, and I shook the hand of my brother next to me. And that was the other thing I really enjoyed about the Jummah Salah, was that we had the rainbow of humanity in there. We had white people, we had brown people, I've never seen a Chinese Muslim before. There was a Chinese Muslim there, subhanAllah. Black Muslims, African Muslims, Afro-Caribbean, from the Caribbean, from the subcontinent, from everywhere in the world there were people. It was just this rainbow of humanity, and I'd never experienced this before. Now I know a lot of masajid have very kind of core audience, that they appeal more to a Pakistani community or to a North African community or whatever, but in many masajid this doesn't happen. People, all Muslims tend to go, but it doesn't matter. There's none of this kind of separation. It does feel very much like the real world. That's the other thing. I don't feel like I'm cut off anymore. So my first inclination was to keep things very quiet. Okay? I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't want to speak about it. But I realized I had a duty. So if I have been given this gift, it is incumbent on me. That's a posh word for it. It's my duty. Right? It's absolutely my duty to spread the message of Islam to other Ahmadis. And further, after a while, I realized that it also was my responsibility to warn my Muslim brothers and sisters that there is a deception. The deception is not always conscious, but it does exist. There is a confusion, and it's my job to explain some of the differences between Ahmadiyya and Islam. So I went through a very public reversion process. I was told in no uncertain terms that unless I was very public in my shahada, that the Ahmadi would say I was kicked out. Alhamdulillah, I was given a letter of commendation by the Ahmadiyya shortly before I left, so there was no doubt that I was of value to them. And then I made a very public reversion, so there was no mistake. I wrote to Mirza Ahmad, a public letter, still available online, by the way. If you go to Sheikh Google and Google my full name, you'll find the reversion letter is still up there at the top of the list. Alhamdulillah. So I spoke to Dr. Rashid, who was one of these people, lovely man. People write a lot of, the Ahmadis write a lot of bad things about him, make disgusting cartoons about him. He's a lovely man. Trust me when I say that. He introduced me to another revert from Ahmadiyya to Islam called Shahid Ahmad, who introduced me to Mulana Suhail Baba, the khatm-e-nubuwat center. He said, you don't have to join these people, but if you make your reversion public in their center, you guarantee that it will get worldwide instantly. And that's exactly what happened. I was not prepared for that, but I trusted these people, and I did that. They still try and say, yeah, you were kicked out because you did this, you were kicked out because you did that. Well, interestingly enough, some of the leaks that I've had sent to me by insiders, one of them is a dossier that they keep on me. I say dossier, it's not like one of those MI5 folders that big or whatever. It's a one-page Word document, right? That's what they keep on me. And in that it's very clear I wasn't kicked out. So for any Ahmadis who end up watching this, I'd just like to say, please do a Freedom of Information access request to the Ahmadiyya Center and ask for this document that they hold in my name, which, although half of it is complete lies and fabrications, the bit that they're very, very clear about, I'm wrong, I wasn't kicked out. You should definitely ask for that one. But that's quite funny. So that's what happened. I went from being really quiet to being biggest loudmouth ever. You know, went everywhere. At first I was very active on a site called Ahmadi.org, which I'm sad to say is not as good as it used to be. But at that time was a fantastic place where lots of reverts from Ahmadiyya to Islam would gather to discuss the issue. A lot of Muslims as well. Most of them have left now, and most of those are now on my website, which is thecult.info. I wrote a document 3 months after I left called Life After the Cult, which described how I felt about the process. By the way, cult is a strong word, right? But it is accurate. I mean, we've looked into this in quite some detail, and a lot of the activities undertaken by the Ahmadiyya leadership towards their membership is very cult-like, quite scary. Certainly the way they treat their dissidents and people who disagree with them is shocking. Some of the disgusting threats that they sent to me and other people who have left Ahmadiyya, you would not believe. I'm going to share one of those with you shortly. You might have to cover your eyes. But I've begun to do talks like this quite a lot at various masajid as well. I was the first Ahmadi revert to go live on British TV, went on Iqra channel and discussed my experiences of reversion from Ahmadiyya there. That was interesting in that I was the first person to take back some of the lies that had been attributed to the Ahmadiyya. For example, people have misconceptions about the Ahmadiyya, and it's my job also to correct those, for there not to be any fear from either side. You know, Ahmadis are taught to fear Muslims. It's our job to help correct that. They're taught that by their leadership. Some of our leaders tell us to separate from the Ahmadis, right? Now, I don't agree with that approach. I think we should engage with them. I think we should treat them just like any other recipient of dawah, but we should do that being really aware of their beliefs and very firm in our own aqidah. It's very important. You need to know about them, for sure, but engage with them in a loving way. And if they're hostile, you know, I used to get really upset. It used to be really horrible to me. I mean, you know, boo-hoo, I was very upset, you know, very upset at some of the filthy swearing, the disgusting smears, and I would get really upset about it. But now it's just, delete, 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 you know, no problem. If that's how you want to behave, that's how you want to behave. I'm determined not to go down that route now. So our engagement needs to be that mature. It needs to be, well, if you're going to be bad, we're not going to engage. Wait till you calm down a bit and we'll engage. And if they want to be good, if they're interested, then take the opportunity, seize the opportunity, be aware of their beliefs. Sometimes you will know more than they do. You'll say something like, Mirza Sultan Ahmad claimed this, and they'll say, no, he didn't. That's cognitive dissonance, okay? And that's just a reflex defense mechanism. Don't be offended or upset by that. Most Ahmadis simply do not know. And a lot of one-to-one dawah. Alhamdulillah, since I've come back to Islam, I've engaged with lots of Ahmadis, both online and in person, and many of those, alhamdulillah, have come back to Islam. It's in double figures. On a personal level, it's, for me, the best part of it is when people who were in Ahmadiyya come back to Islam. It's beautiful. And around the world, it is a much, much bigger figure than that. I know of other brothers in America, for example, giving dawah to Ahmadis and inviting them to Islam, and many, many people are coming back. And a lot of Ahmadis are doing it secretly. Okay? They're afraid of their families, they're tied in these social structures, they're scared, they don't want to upset their families. Can you imagine, you know, the kind of scandal that they would evoke? They don't have what I did. What I had was the opportunity for a fresh start. Okay? My life was already in pieces. And then I went to Sheikh Google, right? So in a way, it was easier for me. And then I rebuilt my life, alhamdulillah, with the help of Islam. But for other people, they learn about it while they're still enmeshed in their current social structure. So it's harder for them. So be patient with these people, is my advice. Now, this is very shocking. Can anyone see that? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the top it says, love for all, hatred for none. This is something that I was sent before my first talk at Morden Islamic Center. I was the first Ahmadi revert, as far as I'm aware, in the UK to go public and talk about my experience as an Ahmadi. Before I went there, there was a rape threat sent towards my daughters. And since then, there's been considerably worse. Some Ahmadi had made a fake email address using my father's name. My father died 10 years ago, okay? Over 10 years ago. And they used my father's name, knowing that he passed away, and they sent this email which said, very sad story, send to everyone, see you in a couple of days. So what does that imply? When a dead person sends you an email and says, see you in a couple of days, what does that imply? What does that imply? It's a threat, right? Okay, so from the grave, Mubarak. And an attachment was a really professionally created newspaper article. I'm going to read this to you. They're referring to my daughters here. They say, 2 sisters, they give their names, and daughters of Shahid Ahmad of London were brutally raped yesterday at their residence. This was set in the future, brothers and sisters. In other words, this date of this newspaper article was set in the future, a given date. So I'll repeat that. 2 sisters, and they give the names, which I've blanked out, and daughters of Shahid Ahmad of London were brutally raped yesterday at their residence. Local police have a suspected man in custody, Mubarak Ahmad, who's my father, who claims to be a devout Muslim, but my father was an Ahmadi. According to initial investigations, the heinous, blah, 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 and it just goes on. It was a real shock. Real shock. And the same person, or someone involved with this person, called the Morden Islamic Center before I spoke and mentioned my daughters by name and said that they were Mubarak and said, tell them to be careful. They say, love for all, hatred for none. That is their slogan. And they send things like this. And they have sent significantly worse things. Can you believe anything significantly worse? It is so vile, so filthy, that I cannot even share it with the police. This is what happens when we leave a cult. So when I call this group a cult, I don't do it lightly. I don't see it just to try and create hatred. You've heard me speak now for over an hour. It's over an hour, right? Sorry about that. A bit longer than I thought. But do I sound like a person who hates Ahmadis?
No.
Got to hear this, brothers and sisters. Do I sound like a person who hates Ahmadis?
No.
Okay, so that's on the record. And I don't hate Ahmadis. My mother is an Ahmadi. My beloved uncle is an Ahmadi. I don't want any harm to come to these people, but some of these people are really enmeshed in a horrible cult mindset. They're really, really taken in by this cult. And some of the filth that they write on the bulletin boards and the way they engage and the way they take joy in the suffering of Muslims around the world, that they say, this is your comeuppance, you had this coming. You are cursed, you are satanic. This is what they say to us, brothers and sisters. It hurts. But now when I receive stuff like this, when it's a personal thing, delete, 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 whatever. You ain't changing me from my path. I believe that the Allah who created me, and the Allah who guided me back to Islam, I believe that He is responsible for my safe being. He is responsible for the safekeeping and well-being of my family. And I put my trust and my faith in Him. If the Qadianis want to do something, they will only be able to do it with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want any harm to come to me or my family, there is nothing they can do. Nothing that them or any of their friends can do to hurt us or anyone in the Ummah. So all we need to do is put our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we'll be okay, inshallah. That's my firm belief. So they didn't put me off. They sent these threats, they didn't put me off. I was determined to speak. Remember, it's not my nature to do this kind of thing. This is, for me it's still a difficult thing to do. It's easier than it used to be, but to speak to Muslims who I was taught to fear, and to speak publicly as well. This is not something I used to do. I was, believe it or not, real loner in Ahmadiyya, okay? Not some big shot or anything. Not a very social person either. That, alhamdulillah, that's changed. I found a family, alhamdulillah. So, let's talk about we've talked about my personal experiences. We've talked about, I say we've talked, I've done all the talking. Mirza Sultan Ahmad and some of his beliefs, and some of his prophecies, and some of the things that he said that were quite shocking, and his behavior. Let's talk about it from from a political aspect and from a religious aspect. So let's look at where the Ummah stands on Ahmadiyya. Why is Ahmadiyya not Islam? This is what we all want to know, right? Why is Ahmadiyya not Islam? Well, the first thing to bear in mind is that the theology debate has been done and dusted. We don't need to debate theology with Ahmadiyya. Our scholars have done this for us. I'm not saying that we should outsource our thinking, but when the entire ulama, when the consensus of the ulama is that Ahmadiyya is outside of Islam, and when Muslims are so welcoming, we want more people in Islam, don't we? Wouldn't it be nice if all the Ahmadis became Muslims overnight? All it takes is for the ulama to say, yeah, they're Muslim. I said, we'll accept them. But the ulama were very clear on this. The Ahmadiyya believe in a new prophet, and therefore Ahmadiyya is not Islam. All our authorities, all of our ulama, are in complete agreement. Sunni and Shia, by the way, complete agreement that Ahmadiyya does not represent Islam in any way, shape or form. They have a new prophet. That implies division. Every time there is a prophet that comes, yeah, you get sectarianism. You had the Jews. Some, they believed in some prophets, not in others. Then you had the Christians, right? The Jews did not believe in Jesus, right? But the Christians didn't call themselves Jews, did they? They called themselves Christians. And then you had the Muslims. The Christians don't believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the Muslims do. We didn't call ourselves Christians. We didn't say we're the true Christianity. Then the Ahmadiyya come and have Mirza Sultan Ahmad. But they say we're the true Islam and you lot are kuffar. Sorry, but that ain't fair. Is it? It's not fair that they can take our religion from us, have their own prophet, say we're kuffar. Where does that leave us? We are firm. We are firm in our beliefs. Alhamdulillah. Our deen was completed for us over 1400 years ago. We are happy with that set of beliefs. Alhamdulillah. That's what makes us Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a name, Muslims, in the Qur'an. We are happy with that name. But the Ahmadiyya would have us not have that name. And they say that you have to believe in Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who you're shown to be is of dubious character. You have to believe in him to be a Muslim according to them. Remember, the Ahmadiyya, they make takfeer on us. So, what do I have here? A whole bunch of fatwas from the ulama that show the Ahmadiyya is not from Islam. Some in Arabic, some in Urdu. There's just loads. You know, there's fatwa after fatwa after fatwa. The consensus of the ulama is that Ahmadiyya is not in Islam. So let's not keep talking about whether Ahmadiyya is Islam or not. But I want to debate you on that, okay? There's no point debating on that. Talk about the things that you're firm on. The Ahmadiyya really don't like being told that they're outside the fold of Islam. They really don't like it. I didn't like it. When I was an Ahmadiyya, I didn't like it. But then I wasn't aware of the facts. So we need to make them aware of the facts, and we need to present to them very logically and kindly what the differences are. So let them make the choice, you know. I was presented with the choice. I made my choice. If they want to stay Ahmadi, lakum deenukum waliya deen. But if they want to come to Islam, alhamdulillah, welcome to the family. But they do reserve the right to label as kuffar the whole of the ummah. There are plenty of references to show that the Ahmadiyya, as a group, make takfeer on all Muslims. Okay? They have a terminology, they say Ahmadi Muslims, non-Ahmadi Muslims. But actually when they say non-Ahmadi, they mean someone who is not a true believer. One of us has got to be wrong, right? So, if we say the Ahmadiyya is out of fold of Islam, and there's 1.5 billion of us, and there's 500,000, they say we're out of the fold of Islam. One of us has got to be wrong. And given the evidence, and it's not just done by force of numbers, by the way, just because there's 1.5 billion of us, we might be on misguidance. But if you look at the evidence is very clear. Who is on guidance and who is not on guidance. So it's our duty to invite them back. And of course, what did Rasulullah ﷺ say about misguidance? He said that my ummah will never be united on misguidance. Follow the Jama'ah, he said, if you're in doubt. The largest body of the Muslims. Stay on the consensus. Mirza Sultan Ahmad ejected his group from that consensus 100 years ago. So, the thing about takfeer, okay, be very careful, brothers and sisters. Yes, as a creed, as a body, they are outside the fold of Islam. But the scholars of the Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah are very clear about takfeer, that we as individuals do not have the authority to make it on other individuals. So don't go around saying, oh, you're kafir, this, that, the other, okay? That doesn't help us. And we might be wrong. You might be talking to someone who is a closet Muslim. You might be talking to an Ahmadi whose aqidah is that Mirza Sultan Ahmad wasn't a prophet. Then suddenly you rejected someone from Islam without giving them the opportunity to explain their beliefs and to stand firm in what they believe in. So there are many other reasons as well, but basically the consensus of the Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that making takfir is an enormous and awesome thing, and that we as individuals should do it. When I came to Islam originally, I used to do it. I used to blindly go around saying, you kafir this, you kafir that. Completely wrong. So this is something I learned over the last few years. Don't make takfir on individuals. We do say Ahmadiyya is out of Islam, but we don't label individual Ahmadis as kafir. Even the scholars, when they encounter something that is against Islam, they will say, so-and-so has made a statement of kufr, or so-and-so is walking along the path that is closer to kufr. They're very delicate about this issue. You see how inclusive we are as an ummah. We're so careful. We don't want to reject people. We didn't want the Ahmadis out of Islam, but they made it too easy. They had a new prophet, they had a new set of beliefs, so the ulama had no choice. Now, Mirza Masroor Ahmad is the current leader of the Ahmadiyya. And this is something that he said in a Friday sermon. So going back to the love for all, hatred for none theme. Mirza Masroor Ahmad said, rejection of the Imam of the age, he's referring to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, in itself takes one to the satanic abyss, and one who is taken in by satanic temptation cannot have any connection with the gracious God. To follow the Satan is in effect to worship him. Brothers and sisters, what Mirza Masroor Ahmad is saying is that we, the Muslims, are Satan worshippers. But he is not just saying it about us. He is saying it about the Christians and the Jews and the Hindus and everybody. He is calling us all Satan worshippers. Now, brothers and sisters, I despise the ideology of Ahmadiyya because it stands in opposition to Islam. I love individual Ahmadis. But I will never call an Ahmadi a Satan worshipper. Ever. Because they believe they're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They truly believe that. And they are. Because, let's face it, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who I begged for guidance when I was at my lowest ebb, when I begged for guidance, did he not guide me? Was it not the same Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But they call us Satan worshippers in their speeches in Morden. This has to be corrected. We have to go to them and say, you cannot say this. You cannot call us Satan worshippers. We are Muslims. We are on guidance. And we would never say the same about you. We wouldn't even call Christians or Jews or Hindus or even, polytheists, we wouldn't call them Satan worshippers. This is disgraceful. This is a hideous thing to say. So when you hear thought stoppers, you know what a thought stopper is? It's a slogan. It's a slogan that's designed to stop you thinking about the reality underlying what people really mean. When you hear a thought stopper like love for all, hatred for none, remember what this man said about us. Love for all, hatred for none is just politics. Okay? Religions do not have slogans. Politicians have slogans. Cults have slogans. We don't have a slogan. If you have any slogan, it's the article of faith, it's a shahada, right? Not even a slogan. But we don't go around saying this is our latest branding exercise for Islam. We don't say love for all, hatred for none represents Islam. Anyway, love for all, hatred for none is not Islamic. Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love the arrogant boaster? Does he love the hypocrite? Does he love the... No. In the Qur'an there are over 20 verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly states that he does not love such and such a category of person. Should we love the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love? Should we? We should invite them to guidance, but we shouldn't love them until they come back to believe. So, this bit's boring. It's, I'm going to skip over this. You're not going to be interested in it, but if you'll get the slides, so I'll skip over that bit. This is another technical point as well. I'll cover this really quickly. Basically, Ghulam Ahmad is not Ahmad. You know they call him Hazrat Ahmad? His name was Ghulam Ahmad, i.e. servant of Ahmad. The servants can't suddenly become the master. Ahmad is the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's referred to Ahmad in the Qur'an by Isa alayhi salam, right? So Ahmad is not Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's name. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, Ghulam Ahmad, servant of Ahmad. That is his name. Don't be fooled when they say he's Hazrat Ahmad. He's not. And also, I don't know if you notice some of in the media, they get people in the media to say, oh, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, right, in the media. But they never get them to say the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The media, the press releases of the Ahmadiyya Issue 4 have the media say Hazrat, like a term of respect to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad or to Mirza Masroor Ahmad, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad. But you'll never see them ask the media to use a term of respect for any of the other prophets, including Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's interesting, isn't it? That tells you something about where their priorities are. Very quickly, where is the value add? Well, you could say, well, you know, why does Ahmadiyya exist as a new entity in terms of its reform aspects to Islam? What does it reform? Well, they say that they are against the jihad of Muslims going out and conquering people and making people Muslims. That's a straw man, brothers and sisters. Islam didn't spread this way. Islam's the fastest growing religion in the West. We do jihad in the West of that sort? No, there is no jihad of that sort. Jihad is defensive jihad. But they created this straw man that Muslims are violent killers and we go out converting people by the sword. This is a myth. This is not how we convert people. You don't convert people with swords. You convert people through speech and through hearts. We won the battle of hearts and minds. That's how we won the kingdom of Andalus. And inshallah, that's how we will prevail again. This is the battle that needs to be won. But they built this straw man that Muslims are bloodthirsty, terrorists, mullah killers, bearded, blah, 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 blah. And that's what we've come here to stop. So they created a straw man. A straw man is basically a fake argument. You make this fake argument that is untrue, you batter it down, and you claim yourself to be victorious. This is not the truth. So actually they have added nothing to Islam. They have no real thinkers, they have no real philosophers, no real literature, no real contribution in any real humanistic sense to humanity, any more than Islam by a long stretch. So nothing's been reformed, nothing's been changed. The only things that they have come to attack are strawmen that they built themselves. It's effectively a parallel religion. Mirza Sultan Ahmad is their prophet. His companions are referred to as the Sahaba. His successors are the Khalifas. Jalsa Salana is kind of like a proxy Hajj. Chanda is more important than Zakah. Qadiani is referred to as metaphorically as Mecca. And they say that Masjid al-Aqsa is in Qadian. So when you have a completely parallel set of institutions, my brother can't take anymore, can you? When you have a set of parallel institutions like this, you're a separate religion. So we would be very, very happy if Ahmadiyyas class themselves as a separate religion. What we don't like as Muslims is to be misrepresented. The Ahmadiyya does not speak for Muslims, does not speak for Islam, it speaks for Ahmadiyya. Fine, khalas. A few questions that you might want to ask some followers of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad when you engage with him, brothers and sisters, is why did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad back the Boer War? Does anyone know what the Boer War was? Anyone? That's right. Basically, the Dutch and the British had a fight over natural resources in South Africa, right? And the Boers, who were the Dutch, they were battered by the British brutally. There were concentration camps set up where 25,000 women and children died at the hands of the British. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad raised a chanda for the returning conquering soldiers. Which prophet in history backs a war like that where concentration camps are used and women and children are killed? Who does that? He's always praising the armies of Victoria, you know, you're under God's protection, etc. That didn't last, did it? Where's the British Empire now? You know, you cannot put you cannot make a prophethood out of a state of impermanence. Empires come and go. We now have an American empire, right? And that will have its time too, then there'll be another empire. As we see in the Qur'an, Allah gives authority to people in turns. Where did Mr. Mirza die? Now this is important because he claims that he would die, in one of his prophecies, he would die in Mecca or Medina. So it's a very simple question to start a conversation. He prophesied that he would die in Mecca and Medina. Where did he actually die? Right? Does anyone know where he died? Sorry?
He fell outside the toilet.
Sorry, didn't get that?
Died or something. He died
Yeah, well, how he died is not as important as the prophecy. There are lots of stories. By the way, brothers and sisters, one of the classic lines given to our kids in the past, which we can't use anymore, okay, is, and I know people who have heard this, is that people say, oh, to Ahmadis, your prophet died on the toilet. Right? Anyone heard that one?
Yes.
Okay. That's actually false. Mirza Sultan Ahmad did not die on the toilet. Okay, so let's dispel that once and for all. It's rubbish. However, the way he died was much worse than dying on the toilet. It was much worse than that. And you shudder when you see, because the reason why, no one should laugh at this, by the way. Everyone's going to die at some point, okay? And how you die, that's Allah's choosing, how you die. But it was because the manner in which he predicted a similar type of death for his opponents. And he knew that this death had come upon him. He knew when he was dying. He wasn't able to take the Shahada when he passed away. He was not able to do this, despite what Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud, his son, said. His father-in-law was there to witness his dying moments. And they were not a pretty sight. And the reason I say he didn't die on the toilet was because the toilet was brought to him. Okay, it was a horrible state. I won't go into the detail. But he said he would die in Mecca, Medina. He said that his opponents, especially Maulvi Sanawala, would die of cholera in his lifetime, and he didn't. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad actually died of cholera. And so this is why it was such an awesome thing that he died in the manner that he predicted for his opponents. Okay, that's why it's important. But please, when you speak to Ahmadis, don't use this. It has no value, has no effect, doesn't mean anything. Unless you know the whole story of Maulvi Sanawala and what he predicted in terms of his death. I know some people, well actually I know one person who came to Islam because their first exposure to any anti-Ahmadiyya material was, oh, your leader died in the toilet. And this person who I know very well said, no he didn't, and then began a journey of investigation. So what that did was it started a journey of investigation for me. But trust me, it doesn't work for everyone. In fact, it won't work for most people. Imagine someone says something bad about our Prophet ﷺ. How would we feel? We're going to feel good about that? Are we going to listen to the person? Or is it going to make us firmer on our faith? So you can imagine Ahmadi would respond in the same way, right? So this is not the way to give dawah. Let's not use this. There are plenty of other things we can use, and hopefully, inshallah, you'll be able to take away some things from this. More theological points. Okay, that's better, inshallah. Which widow did Mr. Mirza marry? So this is another thing you can use. He had a prophecy that he will marry a virgin and a widow. Married one, not the other. Impossible to get round. Can you pay to get into heaven? They have not a pay-as-you-go, but a contract scheme to get into heaven. Okay? So this contract scheme is called Bahashti Makbara, and it's a system called Wasiyat, where you pay 10%, from 10% up to 33% of your income to get a guaranteed ticket into a heavenly graveyard, which guarantees you paradise. Now, if that doesn't sound like a cult, what does? What gets us into heaven? Our deeds, right? Our thoughts and our deeds get us into heaven, inshallah. And ultimately, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He forgives so much. You know, He gives so. I'm really lucky. I went to 38, and I'm told that once I made shahada, all my previous sins were wiped out. Subhanallah, that's a lot of sins. God, let me tell you, brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah. And may Allah continue to forgive all the Muslims their sins and to keep us on the straight path. But you cannot pay to get into heaven. No amount of money will get you into heaven. But there is a scheme called Wasiyat that gets you into a heavenly graveyard in the Ahmadiyya, and you have to pay 10 to 33% of your money. And what happened to the missing 45 volumes of Braheen Ahmadiyya? Braheen Ahmadiyya is supposed to be the magnum opus of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and his work. What happened to the 50, he promised 50 volumes, delivered only 5. And he said, I fulfilled my promise 23 years later, after writing the 5th volume. I fulfilled my promise because the difference between 50 and 5 is just a nuqta. Do you know what nuqta is? A dot, right? So he said the difference between 5 and 50 is a nuqta. So I fulfilled my promise. Right, okay, imagine, yeah? I'm sure you get this. I'm going to sell you 50 bottles of Evian, right? and you've got to give me the money for all 50 bottles up front. You'll get your 50 bottles. You give me the money for 50 bottles up front. I take the money. I give you 4 bottles of Evian. A year passes. 2 years pass. 20 years pass. I still haven't delivered any of the other bottles. Isn't a Muslim supposed to fulfill that contract?
Yeah.
The Qur'an is explicit. We Muslims have to fulfill our contracts. He says with 5 it's complete. And he says, these lousy bastards that you were dying for, you can have them back. Is this the manner of any decent business? Imagine I say to you, you know what? All this lousy money you were dying for. Imagine that Nurdu sounds much worse Nurdu, believe me. And Punjabi even worse actually. But imagine I'm saying that to you, 20 years down the line. There's this money for the 50 bottles of Evian that you're dying for. Yeah, here, have it back. This is what he did. Here's your 5th bottle. That's it. The difference between 5 bottles of Evian and 50 bottles of Evian, it's just a few drops of water anyway. This is what he did. This is the character of the man. And this is very upsetting. Very upsetting for anyone who has Ahmadis who are still within that fold. Another thing to ask is, politically, whose side are they on? Does anyone recognize the picture? Anyone? That is on the right, with the very impressive headgear, Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the current leader of the Ahmadiyya, and on the left is Bishop Michael Nazir-Ali, the former Bishop of Rochester, and one of the most virulent Islamophobes in the country today. Really, really hates Islam. So this is actually a picture that his great-grandfather Mirza Sultan Ahmad would not have been happy about, because he was constantly arguing with these people. But this shows you that they're prepared to shake hands with people like this. This guy despises Islam, created a lot of trouble for Muslims by printing a lot of very hateful things in the media. Anyone know who that is in the middle? It's a blurry picture. I'll give you a clue, he's an Israeli. But he's not just any Israeli. Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres, the president of Israel, who has been invited as an honored guest to an Ahmadiyya dinner in their center in Israel. An honored guest of their iftar dinner. Shimon Peres, the man who is known as a war criminal, who in the original war against Lebanon had 100 people killed in Ghana through direct order. Guy is a complete criminal murderer. And he is there as an honored guest in their center in occupied Palestine. Andrew Brons, MEP, the Ahmadiyya sent him a letter of congratulations, congratulating this guy. Andrew Brons, actually a BNP candidate, and he was congratulated by the Ahmadiyya in a letter. Okay, so we know that theologically, Ahmadiyya is not Islam. We know that politically, they will side with the enemies of the Islam. And there are many, many more examples of this. We know that socially, they project as Muslims, but actually they have a different faith. We know that theologically they have a different faith. So how do we bring them back? How do we engage with these people? Because remember, as I say, they had their iman stolen from them. It's not their fault. They were born this way. I was born in an Ahmadi family. It wasn't my fault, was it? But it's our job to give them the message. So how do we do that? There's a lot of censorship in other countries. Not in this country, but in other countries. I say don't ban his books. I say promote his books. I say translate his books into English so that other people can see just what rubbish the man has written. Okay? Very important, because through understanding, through reading, you will get a clearer picture. They have not translated his books, the controversial ones, where he swears at his opponents into English. Why not? Maybe we should do some work in translating them. That might be useful. One example, I found a booklet written by Mirza Sultan Ahmad in English in his lifetime towards a claimant to divinity called Pigott. And this was in English. It's actually in English in the time of Mirza Sultan Ahmad. The Ahmadiyya had never put it up on their website. So we put it up on our website, and suddenly they went on the defensive because this showed one of the failed prophecies of Mirza Sultan Ahmad really clearly. So since that time, they've been doing some very, very strong rear guard action to try and do damage limitation, but it hasn't worked. And we have plenty more that we can share with them on that front. Don't ban Ahmadiyya. Just ensure that there is sufficient awareness, that people understand that Ahmadiyya does not speak for Islam. Ahmadiyya is not Islam. So in the media you will see the Ahmadiyya call themselves Islamic. Let them call themselves what they like. Okay? For example, have you heard of the Church of Scientology? Yeah? Just because they have church in the title, nobody thinks that these people are Christians, do they? Just because they have church in the title, Christians don't care. They know that the Church of Scientology is not Christianity. So in the same way, just because Ahmadiyya call themselves Muslims, as long as we have done our job of raising awareness to the point where the Western media understand that Ahmadiyya does not represent Islam, inshallah that job will be done for us. And people will know. As soon as you see Ahmadiyya in the title, oh, they're that little group in Morden, right? They'll know straight away. Ahmadis are told, and I'm specifically referring to Qadianis. I know people have said don't use the term Qadiani, but the Lahori Ahmadis have become very upset with our website a couple of years back because we kept saying Ahmadis. They said, we are Lahoris. We are Lahori Ahmadis. We are not Qadiani Ahmadis. We do not have these beliefs. They have those beliefs. So please don't keep confusing the two. So we say Qadiani Ahmadis or Lahori Ahmadis. So we get really offended to say, well, you're the Qadiani branch of Ahmadiyya. Okay? Which is fine. We don't mean them offense. Remember, Mirza Sultan Ahmad had a revelation in which God referred to him as Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. Was Allah abusing him? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So, they are instructed to avoid us. Ahmadis, Qadianis, they are instructed to avoid us. They're instructed not to engage with us, to be very careful about us. We're dangerous, we're terrorists, we're backwards, we're grave worshippers, whatever. You know what? A lot of Ahmadis are ignoring this now. Seek them out. Seek them out and engage with them, correct them on their beliefs, invite them to the beauty of Islam. They are so hungry. These people have been deprived of Islam. Imagine, I was deprived of Islam for 38 years. My only medicine in 38 years, brothers and sisters, was the message. That's all I got of Islam in 38 years. The message. Right? Imagine how starved these people are. How beautiful our deen is. We don't know what a jewel we have. Talk about this jewel. Talk about our great figures. Talk about the rightly guided caliphs and their beautiful stories. Talk about the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Talk about our great victories. Talk about Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Talk about our heroes. Invite them to the beauty of our culture, our past, of our heritage. And also, talk to them about censorship. Because they themselves censor their own people. I guarantee you, ordinary Ahmadis are not happy about that level of censorship, and they're beginning to speak out about it. We get emails and letters from ordinary Ahmadis all the time saying, we agree with you, but because of our social constraints, we can't say certain things, we can't act how we want to. But we read your site and we love your site, and please keep it up. So bear that in mind, brothers and sisters, that they're out there, they're hungry for this deen, they're thirsty for this deen. Share it with them. Be as inclusive as possible, engage with them. Be just with them. Don't use bad examples. Don't say your prophet died in the toilet. Okay? Because A, it's not true, and B, it's not relevant. And C, the most importantly, it is not the right way to engage. I know it's a reflex defense before, and it's shocking, and you know it works on some people, but it's not productive. It's not what we need for the next stage in dialogue to these people. Educate other Muslims. Share the knowledge that you've picked up about Ahmadiyya from here. Learn more about Ahmadiyya. More knowledge is better. Share it. Educate other Muslims on what you know. And welcome the Ahmadis back to Islam. That's our goal, brothers and sisters. We want the Ummah to expand. Some of these people, you know, reverts are very, very hungry. They want to learn more and more. They become more active. And inshallah, they'll become active like me too. These are the kind of people we need in the Ummah, inshallah.